Chadondo East Member of Parliament Robert Chagulanyi, who was arrested on Monday in Arua town together with several opposition politicians, has been arraigned before the General Court-Martial in Gulu and charged with unlawful possession of firearms and ammunition. The court was chaired by Lieutenant General Andrew Guti. On the same day, Arua Municipality MP-elect Kassiano Wadri, Ntungamo Municipality MP Gerald Karuhanga, Jinja East MP Paul Mwiru and others have been charged with treason in the Gulu Chief Magistrates Court. Mityana Municipality MP Francis Zake did not appear in the General Court-Martial in Gulu as earlier anticipated. Most of the suspects were tortured and are in urgent need of medical treatment. What exactly transpired in Arua on the day Chagulanyi's driver was shot dead? Was this an extrajudicial killing? Have these politicians been detained on trumped-up charges, or does the state have incriminating evidence to try them? Are our courts of law competent arbiters, or will they prevail over a travesty of justice? On the spot tonight is a panel of three, including leader of opposition Betty Awol Ochan, Kabweri MP Francis Gonahasa, and human rights lawyer Nicholas Opio. Honorable Betty Ochan Awol, thank you for honoring our invitation. Let me begin by congratulating you for having been appointed leader of opposition. Congratulations.
Thank you, and you're welcome. Good evening, viewers.
Mr. Nicholas Opio, you're most welcome. Thank you for honoring our invitation.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. Let me also join you, Patrick, in congratulating my mother, my MP, Mego. Mego is a very important name in Luo. Congratulations upon the ascension.
Don't forget and make it go lower. You can easily forget.
Thank you.
Mego is a title, actually,
Okay.
you know, which means mama.
Okay.
It's an honor. So congratulations upon ascending to the office of the leader of opposition at this difficult time. You have our best wishes.
Thank you.
Okay, and on the live link to somewhere in the outskirts of Kampala, we have the Honorable Francis Gonahasa. Can you hear us, Honorable Gonahasa?
Yeah, I can hear you a little faintly.
That's unfortunate, but we are hearing
But
you
I'm happy to be on
the spot.
on this program this evening. Thank you for inviting me, even if I was just coming in from Arua on this campaign.
All right, I'm going to begin with you, Honorable Francis Gonahasa, for the one reason, because you are in Arua. Actually, you went earlier, and I saw you and talked to you on a different platform last week, and you are focused on supporting the Honorable Kassiano Wadri, and events happened when you were there. You've just returned from Arua. Just maybe give us a feel of what really transpired on the day when we saw that fracas.
Yeah, good evening, viewers. I went to Arua on Saturday, and I was directly involved in this campaign. First of all, it will be interesting to know why did I support Kassiano Wadri, who is an independent candidate, although I am myself FDC. Over the years, I've just realized that the opposition seems to be positioning itself to be in opposition for as long as it can be in opposition. And I remember we had some discussion with other opposition members, and we thought the time has come when the opposition has to work together towards coalescing into what many people call the third force, or a force that can provide an alternative, a credible alternative to the opposition stance we have today. So I looked at Kassiano Wadri, a former FDC member, by the way, who had not been given the flag, but he was a credible opposition individual. And in this country, we have been looking at how we can build the team of opposition people with the hope that in future we will establish ourselves as a possible alternative of credible people. So before we went to Arua, we had met with the DPs, members of the DP, members of the SDP, members who were themselves independent, and some of us in the FDC who think likewise that we can work together to build this credible force. So on Sunday, I was involved in the first rally, very massive rally, because the person we were standing with, Kassiano Wadri, Kassiano Wadri is or was the people's choice, and we could see it. The way they turned up in the massive numbers just to march with him throughout the towns and to attend his rally. We had a rally in Mvara. While people say Kassiano's team was violent, there was no violence on the first day. It was beautiful. It rained, but the people continued to walk with us. They were riding, others were running, others were on cars, and everything was fine. Now, Monday was the day when everything fell apart. The falling apart was because after we had completed our rally in the prisons area, we were driving back, and the president's convoy came head-on into our convoy. I think that was a problem or a very big mistake by whoever organized how the president would be returning to where his helicopter was parked in Ediofe. The roads out there are very narrow. So what happened was that the young pilot or the young driver of the lead car was either frightened or something, and he swerved and pushed some of the boys who were marching into the trench. And these boys lost it, I can tell you. That's when they picked stones. Some of them, not everybody, of course, some of them, and they hurled these stones towards the presidential motorcade. I condemned it, I condemn it, and I'll condemn that type of behavior. It's not right.
Okay, for the first time...
Finally, the president, anyway,
Francis, if you can stop there. For the first time, you are giving us information that you were around that place and you actually saw that people picked some stones and threw them at a presidential convoy.
Yes.
Okay, go on, sir.
Yeah, so the biggest challenge, and I thank government of Uganda that they have suspended the RPC, somebody called him Singuzi. They transferred the DPC from Arua to Masaka because they know that is where the problem actually started. If the management of the president's convoy had been done properly and they had avoided direct head-on contact between the two convoys, we wouldn't have had any problem.
Before I can bring in
the saying that what...
Francis, before I can bring in the leader of opposition here so that she can also tell us what she has to say tonight, I just want to know, because there was death, there was a fatality in Arua. The driver of the Honorable Robert Chagulanyi, when he was shot, he was not at that chaos in the convoy, right?
Not at all. In fact, my car was behind the tundra. And we drove through and went back to our base. So the killing was not in the scuffle on the road. It was about 1 hour later when the SFC team went and surrounded our command and control center. And I don't know what happened because I wasn't on that spot, but this is the information I got. When the police patrol cars got there, somebody sitting in the driver's seat decided to drive the tundra away. On the right-hand side, where our friend Robert Chagulanyi normally would sit, was where his driver Yasin Kauma was sitting. So when the person in the driver's seat started the car and tried to drive away, that's when the person in the seat on the right-hand side of this car was shot in the neck. And the car was allowed to drive all the way. Look here, if you want to stop somebody, you shoot the tires. You don't shoot the person. You don't shoot in the car. So I think there could have been a deliberate attempt to shoot whoever was sitting in there.
Okay, let me bring in here. Let me bring in here the Honorable Betty Awal, the leader of opposition.
Okay.
Your colleagues have been arrested. Your colleagues are facing serious charges, and some of them, according to the Honorable Segona and the Honorable Basalirwa, who has been able to see face to face with the Honorable Bobi Wine, he says he's in a very terrible condition and that he needs urgent medical attention. Even though the spokesperson of the UPDF, whom I've just talked to, the Brigadier General Richard Karemire, he says, well, he cannot confirm to me or to the platform I was using to talk to him that Kyagulanyi had been tortured. You are their leader. You are the leader of the opposition. Now they are looking to you. You have just taken over the mantle of the leadership of opposition and a very precarious time.
Yeah, thank you very much. One thing, let me also convey my condolence to the family of Yasin. Yasin is a very young man, but I was ably told that he has 11 children, and now these children are orphans. This is very unfortunate, and it's in a killing which is not a stray bullet. That was intentional. We should learn to use tear gas. At least with tear gas, the eyes suffer, the skin suffer, but we don't take lives. Or rubber bullets. This is not acceptable at all.
So you think this is extrajudicial killing?
Completely. I want to condemn that killing in the highest term. It is very, very unfortunate. And to some of us, we thought they were really, they wanted to kill Honorable Kyagulanyi. If they could do that, so it is very bad for us. And for us, members of parliament, although it's the opposition suffering, but all of us as members of parliament are concerned. When one of us get into problem like that, it's actually all of us. So all these members of parliament arrested, including Honorable Kyagulanyi. The worst of it all is the torture, and even not allowing the wife to see him in Gulu. This is inhuman. Of all people, at least they should have allowed the wife to see him. I heard now that he has been brought in Makinde. My appeal is to allow the wife of Honorable Kyagulanyi to meet the husband. And also a doctor, probably a family doctor, to also access Kyagulanyi.
Okay.
And for us as members of parliament, we will also be there tomorrow. We delegated some of our colleagues. Today we were for a press conference that we really condemn what the government is doing. We know that in election, especially when it is 1 or 2 days, there are a lot of excitements, people move, so everybody has to be conscious and to try and, protect lives. It is bad, it is very, very bad, and it gives us a lot of pain.
Oh, now, Mr. Nicholas Opio, you're a human rights lawyer, and you have defended quite many Ugandans when they're in trouble over different issues. And this seems to be very strange, because even in a general court-martial, sometimes the media is allowed, the phones are taken there, you can take a picture. But this time around, this is different, because we haven't even seen a picture, an image of Honorable Kyagulanyi, and the media was not allowed in. Do you think they do not want us to see Honorable Kyagulanyi, or what is left of him?
Well, first of all, let me just join the rest of the panelists in sending my condolences to the family of the late Yasin. We have spent a bit of time in Arua trying to put together information as to what happened. And I think we have a near clear sense of what exactly happened in Arua. We have spoken to over 12.5 people, many of whom are in the security sector or in the justice and law order sector, some of whom were witnesses, were people who witnessed what happened. And I think that, in our view, this is what happened. The president was coming from Arua Hills ground, going to Radio Passis for a radio program, and the Bobi Wine campaign team was coming from a Diofe Hill, where they had held their last rally. These venues are 3 kilometers apart from each other. And then in the very first place is a mistake. On the last day of campaign, you can't have the final rallies within that close proximity. There's always going to be a problem. But secondly, when the president was making his way to the radio station, the two crowds met. The convoy of the president ran into the crowd of the Honorable Kassiano Wadri. What happened was that there was a real problem. First, the president never had a lead car. Ordinarily, the president has a police car leading, clearing the road for him. There was no lead car. Instead, the president confronted the crowd with a mamba. It was a warlike, because a whole war car plowed into the crowd. That was always going to cause a bit of a problem. So when they realized that there was a problem, from the accounts we have gotten, the president's convoy exercised restraint. They didn't kill anyone at the time, but they drove their way through the crowd, injuring a couple of people. We've only managed to talk to 2 people with broken legs because the car of the president ran over them. And when that happened, they cleared the way and went. In the middle, there were young people who we have now known threw some objects or stones at the presidential convoy. But here is what is concerning. Having exercised restraint and made it past the crowd, the president's guards, the SFC, returned 1 hour later and headed to Hotel Pacific, where Kassiano Wadri and his team had their headquarters, in what was clearly a premeditated attempt to kill extrajudicially, to break into the hotel rooms and carry out unlawful search, in an attempt to try and exert revenge killings on the supporters of the Honorable Kassiano Wadri. So having exercised restraint, they returned to wreak havoc, to cause confusion, without any due regard to human life, without any due regard to following specific procedures for carrying out a search or arrests. That is what we've been able to piece together. Secondly, there has been suppression of information. You're only being fed with information provided by government, because journalists who were supposed to cover what happened were brutally arrested, their equipment taken away. Some of them have lost their equipment. They were then driven away to different locations. Others were charged in court. NTV's very own reporters and cameramen were charged before the police in Gulu for offenses of inciting violence. So there was suppression of information. Up until now, we haven't got an independent, verifiable information from other groups. And so I think that the consistent thing has been suppression of information, to allow only government-crafted information to be shared with members of the public. So the appearance in a court-martial, really under closed door, was a continuation of the attempt to suppress information. My guess, and from speaking to my fellow lawyers who were in that courtroom, 2 lawyers who were allowed in that courtroom, is that this is an attempt, one, to try and hide away evidence of torture. Quite evidently, the Honorable Chagolanji was severely beaten in the hands of the SFC. These were attempts to try and carry out a kangaroo court process, because court is supposed to be an open court. Having a court hearing in the military barracks by the General Court Martial, in the absence of his family, the absence of his lawyers, the absence of the public, the absence of the press, only reeks of a kangaroo court process. So I think that that entire process is void ab initio, because from what we have heard, he was incapable of understanding the proceedings before the General Court Martial. Thirdly and lastly, Simon, Patrick, I know I've spoken for so long, is to say that there are deep due process concerns, right from the time of arrest to the time of appearance in court of both the Honorable Kyagulanyi and the other MPs who appeared in a civilian court. The question of the role of the police, the role of the SFC in carrying out this arrest, the brutality that they have meted, they are serious human rights concerns. And I think that as the days come and go, we shall begin to piece this together. And I hope and pray that the judiciary in this country will be able to pronounce itself on some of these issues.
Honorable Francis Gonahasa, I'm sure you're still with us, and I want to come to you at this point because you've heard, probably you've heard Nicholas Opio say that the president's guard exercised some kind of restraint, because even you tell us that there was a throwing of stones, but really, let's face it, you throw stones on a presidential convoy with the presidential guard. If the bullets are not fired there, I think it could have been even worse.
Yeah, of course, it could have been much worse. Yeah, it could have been much worse. And I think the Presidential Guard Brigade team exercised restraint, but it should never have been allowed to happen in the first place. That on such a narrow road, knowing how crowds can get out of hand, whoever planned that routing should be punished for what it is. I know these two gentlemen, the RPC and the DPC, have been transferred or suspended, but I think it's not good enough. Because what if it was true that somebody was planning to harm the president? The problem started with the planning of his routing. Because when a president visits a place, the roads are closed. Many roads are closed. And they could as well have told us as a campaign team to change our course, but nobody cared. So there was recklessness on the planning process, and I think the team just came back to, in my opinion, it was to do the best they could to decapitate the Wadri team.
Okay, hold it.
Because that's what they did. Okay. After 1 hour, they came to our command and control center, arrested over 34 people, and I believe they knew they had finished Wadri that way.
Okay, hold on to your point there, Honorable Francis. Hold on to your point there, Honorable Francis Gonahasa, and my colleagues in the studio here. We are going to take a break. When we come back, let's continue with the discussion on the matters that have municipality. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara, and my guests tonight are Mr. Nicholas Opio, a human rights lawyer. We have the Honorable Betty Achan Awol. Betty Ochan Awol.
Awol Ochan. The order is important, by the way.
Betty Awol Ochan.
Ochan.
All right,
Yes.
I'm going to get that. The Honorable Betty Awol Ochan, who is the leader of opposition. And we have online the Honorable Francis Gonahasa, the Member of Parliament for Kabweri. In this segment, let me begin with you, Honorable Betty, because you, as the leader of opposition, Parliament was adjourned up to Tuesday, and we didn't know these things were going to happen. They have happened now, but what are you going to tell your members of the opposition? What are you going to tell Ugandans on Tuesday? What do you expect to happen between now and Tuesday?
from yesterday to today, there has been a lot of moving and looking for our colleagues, trying to see how to bail them. We have a team in Gulu, and led by Chairperson Human Rights, Honorable Jova Kamateka. We took 2 people, 2 from parties, 2 from independents, and 2 from NRM. 6, we delegated 6. But as we sent those people, as we constituted that team, there was already some lawyers, because I talked to Honorable Nwangaba, and he said they were in a meeting, and they were also trying to see how to approach the issue. So we said if our colleagues were not there, we would not be able to handle any business. And I'm very happy that Right Honorable Speaker listened to us, and she saw how all of us, not only opposition, we know that the problem was with us in the opposition. The members of parliament arrested were all in the opposition, but all the members of parliament in the House felt very bad. So Speaker adjourned the House to Tuesday afternoon. We wait Tuesday afternoon. After today, we are not happy. If you hear what took place in Gulu, I am very sure even those members of parliament in Gulu are not resting, because we are not very sure of the condition of our colleague, especially Honorable Chagulanyi. At least for Honorable Zake, we were able to see those pictures which were circulated in social media. But why is it that government does not want people to see Honorable Chagulanyi?
Okay.
Eh?
Okay.
So for us, we are still going to visit Makindi, where he is being detained, and insist that a doctor and family doctor should see him, plus the wife, probably plus us, if they will honor our plea. That is what we are going to do tomorrow.
Okay, there is the Honorable Zake, it appears as of now is not accounted for. And yet we have seen the images of him, I could say gore, because it looks like the hands were hit quite hard. Where you are a lawyer, you represent some of these people. Where is he?
Well, I think that there has to be a full accountability as to the whereabouts of everybody arrested as a result of the incident in Arua. From the sources that we have heard, the Honorable Zake is unaccounted for. The Honorable Munyagwa, no one knows where he is. It is alleged that he was also picked up. So I think that the MPs who have gone to Gulu must not only focus on the Honorable Bobi Wine, important as that may be. We must demand for full accountability and access to everybody who is arrested, and demand that they should be produced in a court of law if they committed any crimes, or that they then must be detained in a place authorized by law so that their families, their lawyers, next of kin can access them. It's their right. The second thing for me that is important is that Parliament cannot continue as though it is business as usual. The practice of extrajudicial killings in by-elections has happened before in Bujiri, where a campaign agent of the Honorable Asuman Basarawa was also shot and killed in cold blood. There have been many incidents of extrajudicial killings by security officials. In Kasese in November of 2016, we've had over 158 people were killed in 2 days of attacks by government forces. The officers who did the killings are walking scot-free. The commandant of the land forces, Iluelo, was in fact promoted, as if to say he did a good job. So I think the time to have a judicial inquiry into extrajudicial killings is now. So many people have lost their lives, and yet there's been no accountability. Parliament must insist on a transparent judicial accountability of the lives lost. These lives cannot be footnotes in the history of our country. There has to be accountability. I think that Parliament must insist on a fully fledged independent judicial inquiry into the killings with a view of holding
two of our guests here are actually
but if I may
members of
conclude,
Parliament, yes?
if I may conclude the last thing, I think that Parliament, it would be a shame if Parliament continued conducting business on Tuesday as if nothing happened. The MPs who have gone to Gulu must provide a full accountability of what they have seen or the problems they have encountered in Gulu. And I think that the Honourable Speaker must be implored to suspend Parliament indefinitely unless we see accountability for all the people that have been killed, those who have been arrested. We must account for them, and Parliament must suspend business, in my view. If I were an MP, I would ask for that.
Let me go to Francis Gonahasa. You've had probably Mr. Nicholas Opio suggesting that the Parliament should actually, or government, institute some kind of an inquiry in what he has termed as extrajudicial killings. Is this something that you could, as Parliament, as members of Parliament, you know, take up, because it is important? And as for you, Honorable Francis Gonahasa, you are, with all respect, Johnny Kamuletile in FDC.
Yeah, you know, we make some of the best laws in this region, but at the end of the day, it's the enforcement, because we would like to have protection of people and their property. And then the bigger challenge is when you go to politics, why do we keep getting so much violence in our political seasons? We may make the laws, but the enforcement is the challenge. So while Councillor Opio thinks about the Parliament making better laws, I think the challenge really is how to implement. Over the last few, especially the by-elections, I have decided to agree with myself that it is the NRM style to make sure. Look at it. In Ginger, there was a decapitation of the opposition team there. What does that mean? All the people who had gone in to do, to plan for the opposition candidate were arrested and were locked up. They were removed from the areas. Then in Bugiri, the same thing happened. The team was removed. In Arua, I knew it was going to happen. So I decided not to stay in the hotel where this thing happened.
This is how you survive. This is how
I
you
would
survive.
like to suggest that, with due respect to the leaders of this country, politics shouldn't be a matter of life and death. Let the people choose the leaders they want. Because when you, I mean, what happened in Arua, 38 of us were taken out, the command center was closed, and the next day, only 3 MPs and the local team stayed out there. We were running from one location to another location to try and put our house in order. All the money in the camp, in the command center was stolen or it disappeared. Now, we had to look for money. We thank God that people outside the area sent us money to do this work. It's really painful to think that the government in power must win all the seats. So they do everything to do that. And I really think when they have another by-election somewhere, again, there'll be this decapitation of the leaders. But what happened in Arua shows you that the people are committed. 3 of us stayed out in Arua. It was myself, and Oyet, Honorable Oyet, and then we had Honorable Alaso and Honorable Christina Bia. These are from the old parliaments. We organized the people and were able to hope from one point to another until we won the election freely and fairly. So it's not about the laws. It's really not about the laws. It's about how we implement those laws. Bribery is very open. We saw lines of women and children, or women and families, going to specific locations to pick money, to pick sugar. This is not the way politics should be done. Intimidation, we say, yeah, we have the army, we have the police to keep peace, but I can assure you the numbers are overwhelming. So the idea of making politics a matter of life and death maybe leads to the killings that we see. Did we have to get a boy killed in Bugiri, for example? Did we have to get those boys killed in Rukunjiri? How about this young man killed in Arua? So it's the laws. I mean, it's not the laws, it's the implementation of these laws. And then the attitude where politicians say, actually this evening I had the president saying the opposition failed them to win Arua. When you go into a competition like that, it's like football. I'll not kick the ball into my goal, I'll kick it into your goal. So when we beat you by kicking the balls into your goal, that is the game.
Okay.
So
okay, Honorable Francis.
I think they really have to put their house in order as to how to do it.
Okay, Honorable Francis Gonahasa.
And also look at what the people really want.
Let me get into the studio here with the
Thank
leader of opposition, because also we want to shed a light into the opposition politics. Because really, if you had a united force against maybe the NRM party, probably this would not have happened, because you'd be so organized. But now look, you are so disjointed. You're so, in fact, the candidate you supported performed. You know that.
No, I must object here to the premise of that question. To suggest that the opposition disorganization is the cause of this problem is gravely unfair.
Completely.
What has happened in the opposition is pure politics. It has nothing to do with the killing of people, the arrest of MPs. I think the premise of that question is grossly unfair. I think that we must separate the question about the conduct of politics, the behavior of MPs, the conduct of parties in election, from extrajudicial killings by state apparatus.
But that killing was in that Pacific Hotel. Pacific Hotel. And the clash was not between opposition and opposition. The clash was government machinery, government agent, not respecting life. If it happened in that chaotic place, maybe we would give a second thought to it. But it happened in the hotel. This is not right. We cannot even bring in the idea that for us as opposition, we are two candidates. No. Even NRM had even more than, I think, more than 6 candidates. Because in that campaign, there were up to 12 candidates. So that was not the problem. The problem was really maybe the police failing to do their work, or those people in charge of president's convoy fail to do their work. And when they fail to do their work, they want to justify their failure by coming to kill a person who was very far away. Even if that person, even if he has seen, committed an offense there at that chaotic place, that time was the time for him to be taken to court of law. And now you see the members of parliament. I don't think so that they were involved in throwing stones, in doing all that. They are arrested like chicken thieves. Yet, we also have a law that members of parliament actually enjoy some privileges even when they are out. And they cannot just be arrested like that. They should be given some honor. Look at the torture. Torture of Honorable Zake and Honorable Chagulanyi. Why do we allow torture when torture is outlawed in this country? Why is it there? What I know is members of parliament across board are not happy. And to go back to parliament without seeing our colleagues, at least we saw those ones who were in court or in Gulu today, we were able to see them on TV. But without seeing Honorable Chagulanyi and Honorable Zake and Honorable Munyagwa, I think no way, and it is not only opposition, but even the Right Honorable Speaker, I'm sure should actually suspend Parliament until when all members of Parliament, and it should not only be members of Parliament treated with a bit of courtesy, you know, taking them as human beings. Even those other people arrested there, in Arua. People must know that excitement in election is always there. So it is the police who failed their work. If they did not fail their work, that clash wouldn't have been there. We always see here, even in Kampala, even close to Parliament, when president is about to pass in a place, they always make sure that people don't cross.
Some roads are sealed.
Yes, completely. So why did they leave that road free? To kill our people. If some other people lost their legs, that convoy moved onto some lakes, and some other people lost their legs. Some other people could have lost their lives. This is not right. We say freedom, freedom. Freedom is just for the few. The rest are never free. They should just be treated like that.
Also, Mr. Nicholas Opio,
yes, sir.
Are we going to see you as lawyers also try to challenge the arraigning of members of parliament, civilians, in a military court, in a constitutional court?
Well, we've been down that road before. The matter has gone up to the Supreme Court. The case was filed by the Law Society, if you remember. So we've been down that road. There will be other legal attempts to try and ameliorate what we see as a very bad situation, what we see as a blatant abuse of process. And without necessarily giving away too much, the lawyers are meeting tomorrow morning, and we shall attempt to go and see our client, the Honorable Kyagulanyi, who we are told is in Makindye Barracks. The General Court Marshal assured our colleagues who appeared in court that they will have access to him. So we will see him with a view of thrashing out a legal response to what has happened. There are many avenues in which we can do. But I think for me, two things must be discussed here that are important. One is the question of the resort to the court martial to try political opponents. We've seen this far too often. Dr. Kizza Besigye, we've seen this happen with the Honorable MP for Nakawa, Honorable Michael Kabiziruka, you know, the name is a bit tough for my tongue, from Gulu. The resort of using military court processes to settle political scores. The second, and for me most fundamental question, is the question of whether there is justice in the military court system. I have been before that court numerous times. That is not a court of law. Even for soldiers themselves, the court is a court that is not run on the basis of due process and rule of law. The members of the court are not even lawyers. They have no legal training or legal background. We must address the question of justice for the army in the military justice system, but we must also be cognizant of the fact that the military court system is intended for the military. It's a disciplinary court. It's a court meant for people in the service of the army. The military court cannot purport to try people under the Firearms Act. The Firearms Act is not a law that is under the military court system. I think for me we must shine a light on that problem, and in this particular case we must reject the trial of the Honorable Kyagulanyi before that court. I've had clients who have been before that court for many years. There's no justice in that court. We must begin to have a transparent court system, not the ones we have in the military court system. Lastly, I think for me, and I must correct the impression that the Honorable that the Honorable has created, that I mentioned
Francis,
that the law was the problem. I didn't say the law was the problem. I have no problem with the law. I know the law very well. What I was suggesting to Parliament and to MPs on this panel was that we must institute an independent, transparent judicial inquiry into extrajudicial killings. I mentioned Kasese, he has mentioned Rukunjiri, he has mentioned Bujiri, you've mentioned Jinja. It appears to be a pattern in by-elections. I think for me, that is a more fundamental question that we must begin to hold to account. But lastly, Patrick, I think we've got to mention something about the president. Not because the president has turned himself into a campaign agent for all kinds of seats. I think we must make a clear distinction between the office of the presidency, the fountain of honor, and the chairman of the NRM. Conflating the two and getting involved in local politics the way that he's doing is denigrating the office of the president. Is dragging the office of the president in unnecessary small skirmishes. I think for me, we must provide for a clear distinction. The president must acknowledge that he's the president for everybody. When he goes to Arua, It's not just a president for the NRM. He's a president for the FDC. He's a president for people who belong to JEMA and all other political parties, and must conduct himself in that respect. I have not heard the president send a condolence message to the family of Yasin. Public statements by the president have been chest stamping, calling himself the man with the heart. He hasn't even had the courtesy to say the death was unfortunate, our condolences. He hasn't even promised that he will have due process for those who killed Yasin. Up to now, the police say they have no idea of who shot the young man. I think that for me, what they are focused on is what the MPs are alleged to have done, but not to investigate the killings. The suspension and transfer of police officers is not the answer to the problem. I think for me, they have to do more, and the president must begin to behave like the fountain of honor and not degenerate into some local campaign chief for an LC1, for an MP in these areas.
Okay.
If he chooses to do so, he must do so as the NRM chairperson.
All right. Nicholas and Honorable Betty Ochan and...
Betty Aol Ochan.
So I must say all of them.
Yes.
In that order.
Yes.
Betty Aol Ochan.
But I also wanted to just say one thing.
Before we take a break.
Before we take a break.
Okay.
That instead of focusing on finding who killed the driver, the focus is elsewhere, on people who have not done anything. Why do we leave that person who did the killing just to go scot-free? That is what we should have seen to be the government to be doing, instead of arresting all the members of parliament that they were not in their rightful place. How about the president? Was that his constituency or his home, so that he should be there and there is nothing about it? But for members of parliament, because they are there, they are not in their own areas.
Okay. Honorable Betty Awol Ochan, Mr. Nicholas Opio, and Honorable Francis Gonahas online. We're going to take a break. When we come back, I'll open the line so that we get to hear what Ugandans are saying tonight on this matter. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara. My guests tonight are Mr. Nicholas Opio, a human rights lawyer, the Honorable Betty Awol Ochan, the leader of opposition, and Mr. Francis Gonahasa, who's joining us by satellite link from the outskirts of Kampala. Let me begin with you this third last segment of our show, Francis. We have the Uganda Human Rights Commission. Do you think the Uganda Human Rights Commission can bite?
Wow, what a question.
Wow, what a question.
The
The Human Rights Commission has made, it is actually supposed to enforce the human rights laws of this country. As to whether it bites, I have seen a lot of challenges. I mean, just like all enforcement organizations in this country, we have the rules, we have the laws, but the implementation is a problem. So I can only appeal to the Human Rights Commission to use all there is to implement and protect the people of this country.
Mr. Nicholas
I think
Opio.
that's as much as I can say about it.
Yeah.
Mr. Nicholas Opio, it appears to me that today, democracy seems to be on trial, human rights seems to be on trial, freedom of expression, especially in the political field, seems to be on trial. How do you get it back?
Well, first to just make a comment on the Human Rights Commission. You know that the Human Rights Commission has suspended its tribunal hearings because they don't have commissioners, enough commissioners to have a quorum. After the sudden death of the little Tima, the retirement or expiry of the contracts of Captain Basaliza, the commission cannot function in its judicial, quasi-judicial function. And so the point has to be made that, you know, we have to make the commission functional. We have to make the commission capable of investigating this. But I think for far too many times, the commission has investigated or attempted to investigate some human rights violations and their reports have fallen short of public expectation. I can just give you two quick examples. The investigations in the killings in Kasese. We haven't seen a public report by the Human Rights Commission in spite of their, Fort Portal office visiting Kasese and conducting some investigations. We haven't seen any report in regard to that incident from the Commission. So I think the Commission has to have a lot of, it's right, I know it has challenges, it means well, but there's a lot more they can do from the public. I think for me, in respect to your question, what is happening is not a challenge to a right, because the rights are fundamental. The problem is our political system. We have a decadent political system of leaders who want to stay in power regardless of the cost. They are willing to drive over dead bodies, step on dead bodies, step on shoulders of people to hold on to power. I think we must get to a point in which power in itself doesn't get into people's heads. You know that power is a responsibility. And I think we have to know that power belongs to the people. You're only exercising it for and on behalf of the people. And what we're seeing is an attempt to cling on to power, to win political majority, to retain political majority at every cost, including money, life, and at the expense of the country. I think that the leaders of the country, and in particular, and I want to speak to direct to President Museveni, that you do not want your legacy to be soiled by incidents of killings under your watch. The time for him to reflect deeply about national dialogue and national reconciliation about this country is now. He might sit on the throne of power, but he must not be indifferent to the call for national dialogue and reconciliation in this country. The country is hurting. You have a vast majority of young people who have grown up under his rule, who have only known him as a president, but they have deep-seated grievances about economic exclusion, about unemployment, about corruption, about misrule, about killings. Today in Kamocha, the police stormed Bobi Wine's neighborhood and lobbed tear gas. Pupils of a primary school collapsed because of the indiscriminate use of tear gas on unarmed population. Two, we must allow people to express themselves. Because if you suppress expressions, you ferment dissent, you ferment violent response. Allow Ugandans to demonstrate freely. It is their fundamental right. I think that the president must perhaps just step back, think, reflect on the history of this country and on the future for this country. Okay,
Honorable Betty Awol Ochan, do we need some kind of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, some kind of a national dialogue to have real truth telling about our past and what we're doing and how we can forge a way forward?
Exactly that. But beside that, we also need to review our constitution. When we call for electoral reform, nobody pays attention to that. You will find that a lot of problems in the country here is actually rooted in how our election is done. First, we said an independent electoral commission. How independent is it? You will find that somebody who is a very big person in NRM, somebody who have probably failed to come through to parliament as an NRM, is there up in electoral commission. They're right from up there to polling station. Is that an independent electoral commission? If we want to involve, to include partisan people in electoral commission, then we must make deliberate efforts in including all the parties. All the parties should be there. Deliberate efforts. If so and so is like this, so and so must come from this party. And we must also take time to build these parties. Sometimes President Museveni can earn a lot of credit if he leaves strong parties. But he is working to kill all the parties. He said by 2021 he wants to see only NRM. That means that he is killing the instrument of democracy and good governance. Somebody who desires to see all other parties dead, who is going to check on your work? Opposition is there to check on the ruling party's work. And opposition is going to caution them. And they should be happy to get even alternative views from the opposition, alternative policies. But if they now want to sit and say everything is yes, everything is yes, then public resources just go through, is it under the table? Corruption is very high. If we try to kill parties, we must know that corruption is going to even move higher than what it is now.
But the reality is also that you are also getting members of the NRM joining you. In fact, the gentleman who is joining us from the other side, the Honorable Francis Gonahasa, has joined FDC just recently from the NRM party.
Maybe I say something about that. Yes. Can I say something before?
Yes.
Because
yes.
yeah, I can say something about the national dialogue and the quality of leadership. I think I've had a problem. The leadership class of this country has a sense of entitlement. Everything is ours. We fought. We must get it. You know the story of the man who killed his animal and is the one who is supposed to distribute it. And if you stand in his way, then you are not right. I think I saw a tweet this morning which really made me sad, because when the old man with the heart says, we fought for this country, we will not allow young people to come in and mismanage it, I think he's missing a point. Because in life, there comes a time when you must go. So when the young people start showing tendencies of leadership, we should actually mentor them. And this is the thing that I'm seeing our friend Kyagulanyi and his people power. They're seeing that the power, like the Constitution says, power belongs to the people. Now, what we have been having in this place are all the parties, which parties believe they will continue to be what they are. You know, UPC is UPC, DP is DP, DSP, whatever. The problem we have now is that the young people have seen that the old parties are cliques, I would call them that really, cliques of people with the self-interests. Now, the young people should be allowed and they should be strengthened to build parties with a difference. What's been going on of late with this thing we call the third force is that you have an NRM person who believes there is a problem in NRM. You have somebody in the Democratic Party who believes there is a problem in the Democratic Party. And we're all looking at how we can make Uganda a better place for all of us.
Okay, Honorable Francis Gonahasa,
yes, please.
Our time is almost running out. I'm going to give you an opportunity to make your concluding remark very briefly.
Okay, yeah. Starting with me, I suppose. I want to thank the people of Arua for standing firm in spite of all that which happened on Monday and could have destabilized Arua. But they were determined to stick in the trenches, like we say, and they fought for the rights of their municipality. You know, when Wadri was incarcerated, the story went around from the NRM teams, and they were saying, you can't you can't throw a ballot for somebody who is in jail, and therefore don't go and vote. So the voter turn-up fell considerably because people didn't want to vote for a man in jail. And some of us encouraged them, it is okay, vote for the man, and he was actually declared the winner in the cells. I pray that government will rescind this, this case, and very soon we should be able to get Wadri sworn in, and he goes back to celebrate with these people because they worked very hard. My conclusion is that we helped, we worked together across the board, and we made something happen for Arua municipality.
Thank you very much, Honorable
I want to
Francis.
thank you, NTV, for coming over to my place. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Francis Gonahasa, and we appreciate your time and we appreciate your insights on the matter. And thank you once again. Mr. Nicholas Opio, your parting shot.
First, we cannot emphasize enough the respect of the fundamental rights of everybody who has been incarcerated. We continue to call upon the state agencies to respect the rights of everybody who has been arrested, and those who have been tortured must access the doctors. Secondly, I just want to appeal to the political class that politics is a service. It is just a service. And many people come and go. The question is not how long you've stayed, but what legacy you've left while in office in the service of your people. And I just want to speak directly to President Museveni, if he's watching the show, that you're sitting on the high throne of power, but the legs of the stool are being eaten by termites. Unless you come down and listen to the people, the young people who are clamoring to be heard, who are clamoring to take their rightful place in the governance of this country, you might live in a bubble and you might miss the point. You can have all the soldiers you have around you. You can unleash them on the population to kill, shoot, to protect you. But in the end, these things won't last forever. Think about your country. Think about the vast majority of the population in this country, young people who simply they want to be heard, they want to play a role. And lastly, I think that the same must be true of the political opposition, that we yearn to see a political opposition that is proposing, not simply opposing, that is providing leadership. I want to have a political party I am proud to join. I don't have a political party now because I don't think any of them represents the value sets and views that I hold for this country as a person. So we want to get to a point where there is healthy competition. The opposition mean well. The NRM must know that they mean well and that they come from a place of goodwill. They're Ugandans like anybody else. They must be accorded the opportunity to influence and participate in the politics of our country. This country is bigger than any one of us. For us who are in the legal practice, we will continue to pursue the legal option. I was quite surprised that the DPP in record time consented to the treason charges of MPs because treason as an offense is personally sanctioned by the DPP, cannot delegate that function. The record speed in which he did his job is rather commendable, but I hope that there is enough evidence. We've had too many treason trials end up in embarrassment for the state. We should revisit these charges. We should reconcile the people of Arua because there are deep-seated grievances in Arua. I travel quite often to the region. I speak to people who are from there, who are friends of mine. People are unhappy. Listen to them. Don't just barricade yourself in this sea of ammunition and army and large convoys. If you don't listen to them, eventually it may not end well.
All right. Thank you very much, Honorable Betty Awol Ochan. Your parting shot.
Yes, one thing we must take very strongly is that parties should actually be supported and helped to stand strong. If parties are not strong, that is why we see a lot of conflicts within the party members. But if we also prioritize parties and we make sure that they are able to see it, they are able to dialogue, they are able to look into their policies, then definitely parties can be strong. But if there are some other people with public resources, we have seen it in the election of LC1, Election of LC1 was a demonstration of how public resources are used. LC1 election in, I think, up to about maybe 72,000 units, NRM managed to send money to all. Where did they get this money? Why is it that some other parties cannot get such money? Is it because they are in power? So that is already a problem. They want to kill other parties and to remain with one party. And we also have this hangover of, you know, individual merit, which is also a big problem. But for our colleagues who are right now in detention, I just want to say that members of parliament, let us stand strong and say no to business in parliament going on until when our members of parliament are moved out, are actually released from their detention. More especially for Honorable Bobi Wine. It's so bad. Why is it that they don't want us to see him? So we have to put our feet down and say no. And to you, the media fraternity, I know you are suffering with us for telling the truth to the world. If you tell the truth to the world, you must also be, punished. So we sympathize with you. We suffer together with you. Let us stand strong together. Members of parliament, tomorrow, those who have time, let us go to Makindi and check on Bobi Wine.
Okay.
Some of us are planning to go at 10, and we insist that they should allow us to see whether he is in the worst situation. At least they should allow us to see.
All right,
thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Honorable Betty Awol Ochan. Thank you very much, Mr. Nicholas Opio and Honorable Francis Gonahasa, and all of you have been a part of this. You have had the appeal from the Honorable Betty Awol Ochan. They would want to see the Honorable Robert Chagulanyi, or maybe what is left of him, considering what we saw of Zach, because many have said he was tortured. And I know sometimes you can disagree, but I don't think because you hate each other. I always want to believe you do this because you love Uganda more. Good night and God bless Uganda.